Thank you and good afternoon. Thank you for this kind introduction. I'll have a pleasure today to talk a little bit, I hope not to you, but with you about, one of the areas, subjects concerning the application of the GDPR, concerning online targeting and specifically behavioral targeting, behavioral advertising. Why is it worth talking about that? First of all, because we as people, we as, employees actually experience that on day-to-day basis, sometimes even not really noticing that, but I will just explain it in a second. And secondly, because we have very interesting decisions of data protection authorities around Europe, which concern this area of the GDPR implementation. And I would like to share with you today what we can learn from them, what we see as things still to work on, and maybe to investigate further. Because as I will also show it to you today, the way how we think about it as about the specific type of data processing is changing, is evolving. So it's interesting to see how does it work. So just to start with, when we are thinking about behavioral targeting, behavioral advertising, what are we actually thinking of? What is it? First of all, online targeting, which is kind of a method of advertising that in a way helps us to target specific groups of people online. This is kind of marketing that is targeted to a specific audience. And how do we target this audience? Well, by learning by heart who they are. Of course, the easiest way would be to ask them a question like, who are you? What do you like? Tell me, and I will just, give you an advertisement that you like, that actually answers your needs. But in reality, we don't talk to advertisers, right? They are just showing us all the advertisements, and they are choosing instead of us what we like, what we need, what might be interesting for us. How do they know that? How do they learn that about us? Well, they learn about us because we leave a track on us. We leave certain data on us wherever we move, specifically online, yes? Whenever we are working on certain apps, whenever we are working on our computers, mobiles, we are being somehow observed. And the tracks that we leave, they are gathered, they are analyzed, and they let us know something about us as data subjects. There are, of course, many methods how you can do it, right? But in terms of thinking about such targeting, which is not based on, any talk with us, any enquetes that we write, for example, we can think about, for example, these types of targeting: behavioral targeting, contextual targeting, geographical targeting, and demographical targeting. What is the difference? First, I will talk about this contextual targeting, and then I will move on and to the very last, which will be behavioral targeting, because by contrast, I would like to show it what it is and focus on that. So contextual targeting is a targeting that is based on what we see on the internet, not what we do on the internet, but what we see on the internet. So if, for example, I go to a website that is dealing with rescuing dolphins live, right? So the company that targets me there with this contextual targeting would think, okay, what can the person who's interested in saving lives of dolphins, what else this person might be interested in? And this is the context of the website that I'm on right now. Geographical targeting is a similar technique, but it's based on where I am at that moment, right? If I am here right now in Brussels in a conference center, most probably at that moment, I will be interested maybe in other trainings. But if I am at that moment in Nevada, in one of casinos, and it's night actually, most probably I'll be more interested in gambling. So this is the way how the place where we are and the information that our place where we are carries about us allows others to target us with the use of this geographical information. Similarly, when we have a demographical targeting, it's based on what is known about us as a kind of, an element of society. For example, what age group we are, or if we are the group of people who, for example, have kids. And then on the basis of that, we are targeted. But none of these ways of targeting us is perfect, right? It's more like a general one. And it may happen that although we both with Magdalena love rescuing dolphins' lives, we're still interested in something different. And the advertisement that is shown to me will not be interesting to Magdalena. What else can be done? Well, actually, here comes this behavioral targeting, which, yes, which is a little bit more advanced and which is based on what is actually tracked on us and what is shown on us and what kind of tracks we leave on ourselves in the online environment. It's kind of an advertising that is based on the observation of our behavior, specifically our behavior online. So it's collecting data about our online activity and then making assumptions, making analysis, which show on the basis of that what we actually are doing. Mostly this is done by automated processing and, of course, profiling. And it, of course, usually is basing on our personal data. And this has already been seen by specialists who deal with personal data protection. Us, of course, as I said, this bases on personal data processing. And for example, Working Party, Article 29, so the procedure of our European Data Protection Board, has already been analyzing what is a behavioral advertising in this meaning, in this, let's say, legal meaning, yes? If we think about it as in the context of personal data protection. And in one of these of the opinions of this Working Party, Article 29, we have this kind of, let's say, I would say a legal definition of behavioral advertising, which is advertising that is based on the observation of the behavior of individuals over time. Behavioral advertising seeks to study the characteristics of this behavior through our actions. So what kind of websites we see? What do we see on the websites? How long we stay on a given website? Where do we go from one website to the other one? How do we react, for example, to banners with advertisements that pop up on the websites that we are? How often we play in our favorite game on our smartphone, right? What things we order, how often we buy, in what way we pay for what we buy online. All this is observed, and an analysis is provided on the basis of that, and then comes our profile, right? In most cases, such a profile is provided in such a good way that most probably, if we just leave our tracks like that, like me and Magdalena, even if we visit the same websites, most probably we will be targeted with different advertisements, because Magdalena will disclose more information about herself. I will disclose certain information about myself, and this will be analyzed and we will be targeted differently. How important it may be? Well, just to give you a comparison on what we, for example, work in our day-to-day practice, I never knew that it's very important for some organizations to check, for example, if you are purchasing online any type of security measures for your furniture. If you have furniture at home, for example, chairs, right? You may either, keep on working with this chair until it destroys your floor, or you may use some kind of, measures to make sure that it does not destroy your floor. For whom this information may be important? Surprisingly, banks. They like to collect information like that. Why? Because people who take care of their personal belongings must probably pay their debts in a better way. And this is not, only about, like prediction. Okay, so if you care more about your furniture, you will be a better debt payer. No, it's all about the calculation and information that they already have gathered through the years about us. And they know things like that. So all the traces that we leave online, if, for example, we are not, getting rid of all cookies that we have on cookie walls displayed to us, they give advertisers certain picture about us, which is, when we think about this behavioral advertising, which is like, giving them actually the information that if they would ask about it, we would just provide them by ourselves. Sometimes we don't even know what kind of information we may be interested in. And sometimes if somebody is being asked, like, are you interested in going to some place, for holiday? We would say, no, I never thought about it. And then we are at certain point targeted with advertisements of such a place. And it's like, why are they showing that to me? I was never interested in going to Graceland, anything like that, right? And it turns out that the information that we left about ourselves on the internet allows certain advertisers even to think more about us than we think about ourselves. So they sometimes know more about it. So where does such data come from? And when we are thinking about personal data, what is the source of the data? Why is this question important for us? Because if we are asking ourselves the question like, what is the source of data? We are already thinking about legal basis, yes? What legal basis we will have to process such data. So for the purpose of such behavioral advertising, where do such data come from? First of all, they come from us, but they can also come from third parties. They can also be sold by companies that we agreed for towards them to process our data on the basis of our consent, for example. In both of these cases, when the data come from us or when the data come from a third party, we have these three types of how such data are being created. First of all, data that we provide directly. So for example, when I open an account on, let's say on an app, whatever account I would like to open online, I usually provide my name, surname, maybe telephone number, right? Maybe email address. This is data that I provide by myself. Or maybe I also provide age, right? If such information is needed or I want to provide that. The other group of data is observed data. Observed data is the data that is derived from what we are doing on a given account, on a given website, in a given app. So for example, how long we stay on a website, how did we log in, if we log in with the use of our credentials in social media, how often we comment, how often we send posts or like posts or do anything else in social media. This is a package of information that is very interesting about us. How do we behave? And also we have also one more group, which is called derived data, inferred data. This is the data that analysts or, actually automats derive from our actions. Like the example that I've given you about banks, yes? Information that you buy something which protects your furniture. And from this information, another information is derived. That most probably you will pay debts solidly and there will be no problem with you. And so that the banks can give you maybe higher credit, right? So this is the information that is derived from the information that either you provide or that is being observed. What do we need this for? No, we need this for to answer the question like, is such behavioral advertising legal in terms of personal data processing, right? And to answer this question, we need to collect certain information about such behavioral advertising. First of all, we need to know what categories of personal data are processed so that we can answer the question like, are these just, standard data, financial data, contact data, or maybe sensitive data, right? Then we need to know the scope of such data, because examples that I will show you in a minute about cases that were taken into account by European data protection authorities, these are cases where such data are processed in great volume. So we often don't even notice that the information that, if I ask you, for example, like, can you describe yourself to me so that I know you better? Most probably after like 6, 7, 8 sentences, you will just finish and you will say, okay, so now you know me a little bit, but at least you got to know me. Whereas on the internet, we leave such a volume of data that we don't even realize how much information can be read about us. So the scope of the data is something that interests us to answer the question, is such behavioral advertising legal? Then we have to also know the sources of the data. Do they come from third parties or do they come actually from us? And this is also very important because, for example, when we think about, let's say, Recital 47 of the GDPR, which says that processing personal data for marketing purposes can be based on legitimate interests, right? But then there usually comes a very important but. And specifically, courts usually, or data protection authorities usually distinguish in this moment whether this is data that we have from a data subject or from a third party. And it's much easier to prove that we have legitimate interest if the data come from us than if the data is collected from third parties. Next question. In such behavioral advertising, what kind of roles do we have as publishers, advertisers? I will show you in a moment all the actors in such behavioral advertising. And then we need to answer the question like, who are they? Are they controllers? Are they processors? Or maybe they are joint controllers, right? We have, for example, one of EDPB guidelines on behavioral advertising in social media, where the board said that the publisher and the advertiser, so the so-called targeter, are joint controllers. But I will show you in a minute that there are many more actors and in such behavioral advertising. And if you call all of them joint controllers, we will be in a great trouble. But I will show that in a minute. Then we ask a question like, what legal basis do we have? And this will be the very important question for today. What kind of legal basis can we use for such behavioral advertising? Usually we think about either consent, so Article 6, Item 1, letter A, or fulfilling contractual obligations, so Article 6, Item 1, letter B, or letter F, legitimate interest. Others, they are usually not, other legal bases are usually not taken into account when we are thinking about behavioral targeting. And when I will show you the decisions that already were analyzing that, they were actually analyzing all these three legal bases and were checking what is possible and what is not possible. Then, of course, there comes the question like, if you want to have legal basis, we need to make sure that persons whose personal data are processed know that the data are processed. But if I ask you the question like, do you really know that somebody is actually right now at this moment targeting you or analyzing your data and how much data is being analyzed? Most probably we are not aware of that. Why are we not aware of that? Oh, mostly because we don't read all those, huge walls, cookie walls that are shown to us, and they usually just make us feel angry, right? Nothing else instead of reading them. I actually like reading them, so I keep on reading them. Very interesting information that we can learn from that. But I agree, they never tell us everything that I would like to learn, to know who's actually right now at this moment profiling me and collecting information about myself. And of course, we also need to know what are the retention periods for, so how long such data collected for these purposes, for these marketing purposes, will be processed. So what kind of actors do we have here? First of all, we have these sources of data, so social media websites, mobile apps, data subjects themselves. Then we have a publisher, so someone who has a space to publish an advertisement. Then we have an advertiser, so someone who has an advertisement, some kind of information that he wants to give to us, and he wants to target us so that we get this information. And this is a very straightforward picture, right? And this is the picture that was analyzed by the EDPB when they were analyzing this behavioral advertising in social media. So the relation between the publisher and the advertiser. In today's media, it's not that easy because between all of them, there are so many intermediaries who also make their money on that, of course. That it's very difficult to say that we just have a relation between somebody who wants to place the advertisement and somebody who has a space on his website to place this advertisement. So what kind of intermediaries do we have? We have a lot of them. So we have, like, for example, DSP. So these are the platforms that organize all the advertisers' needs for placing somewhere the advertisements. So they organize, for example, groups of advertisers who wants to place their ads, and they try to bid that on online auctions. We have SSP, which are platforms that work on the side of publishers, and they collect all empty space on websites to check what's available for an advertisement. But this is not the end yet, yes? We also have ad exchange, which are usually real-time bidding platforms. So usually it's like that these are the platforms that allow you to bid, and if you have a better offer, your advertisement will be shown to a targeted data subject. And if you pay less, you will lose such a bid. And it's all of these intermediaries, and it's all that they are doing. It just happens in splits of seconds, right? It's a real-time bidding. So at the moment when we open our first website on our laptops, right now at this moment, whatever website you choose, at this moment, there is a moment when at these ad exchanges, there comes the auction, there comes the information about us, there comes the information about people who want to show us certain ads, there comes the information like what website is available to show us this app, and it's all in splits of seconds, goes into bidding. Whoever pays more, he wins. And it will be a very interesting exercise if we, for example, all at the same second open our laptops and choose the same website to see what kind of advertisements we would see. It will be very interesting, you know, because most probably all of us will say that we see a different advertisement. And most probably some of us will have this advertisement targeted to him. So if you may just admit, do you usually see things that are mostly directed to women when you open a new website or for example, your email? Like, yes, exactly. At least this. Maybe there's something more, but at least this. Usually they know what gender we are, right? I made an exercise for over a month. I was deleting all cookies like a maniac, right? And I deleted nearly whole computer. But surprisingly, at a certain point, I started getting ads directed to men. So, you know, some drills, things like that. I didn't even know what it is, but it really worked. I mean, the less information they had about me, the less precise this target was. But the most interesting thing is that if we just, you know, do that exercise and we open our computers at the same time, within a split of a second, you will see a targeted advertise directed to you. But before you will see it, all of that will happen. So it's an amazing mechanism that works, and it's pretty difficult to say that they are all like, you know, joint controllers or something like that. So one more important thing that we need to think of when you, for example, I know that some of you are judges, when you will be having a case like that, is to ask yourself the questions like, what actors do we have here? And who is the controller, who is a processor, who is a data recipient, who is maybe a joint controller, right? A very difficult question. This all usually is called a programmatic, so a kind of automated bidding platforms that allow you to, in splits of seconds, to learn about you and to show you proper advertisements. How do they know about us? How do they collect the data? For that purpose, they need another intermediary, which is called a DMP. A DMP, which is a data management platform, which works to make it easy for all of us to understand. in a way like that. First of all, when we enter any websites, our emails, all this data that you can see here, as you know, triangles, circles, etc., is collected by this data management platform. Then this data management platform analyzes data, organizes it, stores it, collects it, and on the basis of that, they make a data segmentation. And they segmented that data in a way to know that there is a group of people who is interested in fashion, a group of people who has pets, a group of people who lives in Brussels, and a group of people who are frequent visitors to a given website. And if these are the areas that our advertiser is interested in a split of second, through the information from SSP and then through ad exchange and then DSP, he will get to know about that. And he will bid in a split of second, giving the information to the DSP and then to ad exchange. And at the same second, you will see your ad. So when we are talking about it, I'm talking about it for like 20 minutes. Sorry, Magdalena, really, I will hurry up right now. But all of that happens really very, very quickly in a way that we don't really see it. But this is all about data processing. So how such behavioral advertising, after knowing all that we learn right now, is seen by data protection authorities in Europe? What examples do we have? The most interesting examples is the saga of Meta's kind of, let's say, war with Irish Data Protection Authority, and with, of course, with very important actors such as EDPB and other data protection authorities who also joined these discussions. Very interestingly, Facebook, Meta, said, this is our model, how we act in our business. We don't make you pay for using our social media, but nobody is just working voluntary all the year round. We need to earn somewhere, right? Where do we earn the money? We earn the money from the advertisers who are allowed to place their advertisements in our social media, and to make sure that you will not be angry with the ads that you see, and that you will be interested in seeing these ads. We are analyzing you, how you behave, what you do in the social media, but also what you do on the internet. And this is an agreement between us that you don't have to pay, but you pay with your data. You don't pay with the money, but you pay with your data. And this is in our contract. And data protection authorities were analyzing that. And the LSA, which here is Irish Data Protection Authority, said in the very, very initial decision where they analyzed the legal basis for processing personal data, our personal data, in such behavioral targeting, they said, okay, this is a contract. We made an agreement like that. So we have legal basis in Article 6, Item 1, letter B of the GDPR, saying that this is necessary to execute a contract between us. Question, do you agree with that? On one hand, we may not agree. We may say, is this really needed for this contract? On the other hand, the Meta, the Facebook, says, but I'm not taking any money from you, right? Give me something that I'll make sure that I will survive as a business owner, right? And they say, pay with your data. And this is the agreement between us. Here comes a very important question for us. When we'll be analyzing legal basis like that, and we'll be answering the question like, is this a really legal basis for processing such data? We need to answer the question of the necessity, right? Is it really necessary to our use of this social media that Meta, Facebook, has all that data? Here comes back the question like scope of the data. Maybe they need to have that data, but do they need that in that scope that they are using the data? Maybe it's just too much. Maybe we can make a contract like that, but not with this scope of data, or maybe not with sensitive data, or maybe something else, right? But then, of course, this has been analyzed thoroughly also by the EDPB and certain European data protection authorities, and they said, no, we completely disagree. And we think that there is no such thing like legal basis on where we have to fulfill contract to do such behavioral advertising. and Meta cannot base on this legal basis. So EDPB has issued its binding decision, one of those that Isabel has mentioned a few minutes ago, in 2022, saying that Meta could not rely on a contract as a legal basis for processing our data for behavioral advertising. And so Data Protection Authority in Ireland issued a decision dated dated on the last day of December of 2022, where they said that Meta could not rely on this legal basis. And they also issued one of those really high penalties. I think it was 390 million euro, if I'm not wrong. That was this amount. What happened next? This was again analyzed, and in the meantime, we also had a important European Court of Justice verdict in one of those cases that was mentioned today. Sorry for my absolutely awful German, Bundeskartellmann, please say it better if you can, where the court analyzed the way how Facebook is processing our data for advertising purposes, and gave us very important thoughts on how we should analyze legal basis such as necessity to fulfill contract, but also legitimate interest. And the most important part of that is shown right now on this slide. While the court said that personalized advertising may be considered a legitimate interest for the controller, very important part of that verdict, it must also be necessary for achieving this interest. And the data subject interests and fundamental rights should not be overridden. Despite online social networks being free, the user cannot reasonably expect the processing of their personal data for personalized advertising without consent, right? And all the other important things that they said here. This is a very important verdict that actually influenced the way how later on this case that was held by Irish Data Protection Authority was structured. And so after this verdict, also EDPB issued very recently urgent binding decision in 2023, where they said that Facebook cannot rely on contract as a legal basis, and they also cannot rely on legitimate interest. So what's left? Consent. Yes, that's true. So in its final decision, the Irish Data Protection Authority in November 2023 said that Facebook, Meta cannot rely on these two legal bases. They can only rely on consent. What happens next? What happened next? We know, I think, yes? Meta presented us a choice. Now you can pay in money or consent. We all know that right now, this is again being analyzed by data protection authorities. I'm really curious to learn how this will end, but it's not the end of the saga yet, because we have other decisions in place which actually touch upon consent. And what I would like to show right now is that it's really difficult to construe, to provide such type of consent for behavioral targeting, which will not be questioned when it will be analyzed if this fulfills all the requirements of the GDPR. So this is the question I wanted to ask at the end, but I will ask it right now. If we don't have as a legal basis, legitimate interest, contract, or consent, what else do we have? Are we really going to kill behavioral advertising? Or maybe we don't need that. Maybe we don't like it and we don't need that. Interesting. Oh, maybe I will answer the question at the end. But I want to show to you one of such decisions of a French, actually, data protection authority in a Criteo case. Criteo specializes in behavioral retargeting, which consists of tracking the navigation of internet users in order to display personalized advertisements. The company collects the browsing data of us as users of the internet, thanks to the cookies which they place on their websites, but also on the websites of their partners. And they ask for consent. But CNIL, when the French Data Protection Authority, when they were analyzing this consent, they said that this consent is invalid. Why was it invalid? Due to the way how it was collected. First of all, such cookies are usually placed on a website before we manage to actually consent. So before we click on this cookie acceptance button, usually such cookies, these marketing cookies, are already placed on our devices. So the authority analyzed that and they said, this is not okay. This is not how such consent should be structured. Secondly, the authority said Criteo was not transparent enough. So people who are targeted by Criteo didn't have all the information, what will be done and how the data will be processed. And one more very important and interesting thing that the French Data Protection Authority analyzed was that there was a joint controllership agreement entered into by Criteo and its advertising partners. And the authority said that this is a contract that does not fulfill all the requirements of a joint controllership agreement. In the end of the day, the French authority imposed a fine of 40 million euro at Criteo, saying that they did not get a proper consent. Okay, so maybe somebody else was more lucky and had a more proper consent. Let's check that. We have 3 decisions concerning Google. All 3 decisions issued by, again, French Data Protection Authority, which personally I think is very brave in actually analyzing such cases where we have these completely new technologies in place. So I always have, I always like reading what they write. And in a similar case where Google also based its processing of personal data for advertising purposes on our consent. So when we, for example, search for certain information and we enter on the Google's website, at this moment, there are certain cookies that are installed on our devices, like computers or smartphones. And later on, they are collected to tell how do we behave, what we may be interested in. And in one of the first decisions, dated 21st January 2019, the authority analyzed the validity of such consent and also transparency of information that Google provided. And they said the data subject had no chance to understand how his data will be processed, because to learn that, he had to go through many documents, many places, because Google had many information which was splitted between different documents, and to find out the whole picture. How am I being tracked? What do they know about me? It was really difficult to gather all the information. And the authority said, no, you cannot construe a privacy notice in that way. You have to say it in such a way that somebody doesn't have to go through all these pages and seek for this information. And the authority also said, your consent is invalid because it wasn't also saying everything in terms of how my data will be processed. Google said that they will change they practice, and they did change that practice. So the French authority had another chance to analyze it again. And in their decision, which was issued a year later, in December 2020, the authority said again, no, you have not learned enough. Your consent is invalid again. Data subjects do not truly know what they consent to. You collect these consents too late when you already place cookies on devices of data subjects, and you are still not transparent. So Google changed this, the way how they approach us once again. And once again, their consent was found invalid. A year later, in December 2021, French authority again considered the validity of the consent and said, this is not okay. So maybe somebody else was smarter and knows how to construe such consent so that we know what kind of legal basis we'll be placing, we will be basing on. Well, actually, it's very interesting to also have a look at the very last one that I want to present to you. It's the Yahoo case, again, by French Data Protection Authority. As I said, they are very active and very brave. 2 years later, on 29 December 2023, the French Data Protection Authority was analyzing the way how Yahoo was collecting our data for advertising purposes. And they said again that actually they were already placing advertising cookies on our devices before they asked us to click on consent. So again, this is invalid. Very interestingly, the authority also noticed that there was a condition of withdrawing our consent, which said that if we withdraw our consent, we will not be able to use our mail that Yahoo was providing to us, which also was found as against the rules of the GDPR. So to sum up, where are we right now with behavioral targeting, or targeting us online in any way with the use of our personal data? Consent, extremely risky. Legitimate interest, less risky if we base on the data that we provide by ourselves, but pretty much risky if this is based on the data that is provided by third parties. Whereas, as most probably we all know, data that others provide about us are also very interesting. So consent as the only legal basis, but we can already see, and we can read these very interesting decisions, that construing a valid consent is a kind of a master art. Do you have any questions?